Thank you so much for joining the partners in the disability vote this evening for the Conversation 360, the vote and disability. This session is being recorded and will be posted to the Disability SA website, YouTube channel, and social media platforms following tonight's conversation. We are here tonight with candidates running in the District 4 City Council race, which will be held on Saturday, May 1st. The deadline to register to vote is Thursday, April 1st. If you do not live in District 4 and you would like to move to a different room, please select the leave room option and volunteers in the main room will assist you. We will begin with some pre-submitted questions and then entertain questions from the floor if time allows. For this district, we anticipate being able to get through 11 to 12 questions, more if possible. Let me remind the candidates of the forum guidelines, which were emailed in advance, and emphasize that responses directed at other candidates or in reference to other candidates will not be tolerated. You will receive a courtesy warning, but you will be removed if perpetuated. Now, let's get to know our candidates. Question 1 is going to be starting with candidate Guzman. Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
You will each have 2 minutes to introduce yourselves. Include why you are running for office and why the disability vote is important to you.
My name is Raymond Guzman. I am from District 4. I grew up in District 4. I am running to City Council for District 4. I'm running because I've lived here most of my life, except for the time I was in university or out of state. I spent most of my life in District 4. I've seen it fall in disrepair and see how prior administrations have not followed through with promises they made. The danger in the district has been growing and we need someone to step up and follow through. I am not taking donations. I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. I am a mathematician. I am sorry, did my camera go? I'm a mathematician, I'm an oil field worker, I've worked in many fields, but I'm willing to set that aside to work for our district and any needs that may face. I'm willing to set aside any other opportunities to be there and be heard by my candidates, by the people in District 4 in any way possible. Thank you.
Cool. Okay for me to go?
Go ahead, candidate Mueller.
All right, thank you. My name is Curtis Mueller. I've lived in District 4 since 1986, almost in the same house because my parent willed it to me. Yay. I married, I have 2 children. They're mixed race because my wife's Filipino, so my children are Filipino Americans. And I basically do nonprofit work. So I'm used to doing things efficiently for very little money, which I think would come in pretty handy in the government. And yeah, because I don't believe in wasting money on things that we don't need to waste money on. I believe actually getting bids should go to the best value, not just the cheapest. So that's, I don't know, I'm running because I hated what happened the last election cycle. And it made me actually pay attention. And I realized that as a person that's been on the forefront with crisis intervention, that I'm pretty qualified to actually try to advocate for everybody, including the disability, including like survivors. I was part of the Rape Crisis Center for 10 years, so I've helped all sorts of survivors in every walk of life. And okay, sorry.
All right, now we will move on to pre-submitted questions. Candidate Mueller, we'll start with you. For question number 2. Currently, a lack of disability data impacts the ability to remove barriers for an equitable quality of life for those living with a disability. How would you work to ensure a disability identifier question is added to all city surveys, applications, and other forms where other optional demographic questions, for example, race and ethnicity, age, gender, LGBTQ identity, and income are collected.
So basically, how would I word a question to collect the disability data?
How would you work to ensure a disability identifier question is added to all city surveys, applications, and other forms where other optional demographic questions are collected?
I'm actually surprised that's not already on there. So that would definitely be priority to get that done. I need to figure out the right way to word it because I have a feeling if I try to read off the top of my head, it might come out weird. But it definitely would work to get that up there because data is everything. And yeah, it's super important to collect data for all sorts of citizens and everything.
Moving on to candidate Guzman,
Yes, this
Would
is
you
the
like-
issue that, sorry,
would you like me to repeat the question?
please go ahead.
Currently, a lack of disability data impacts the ability to remove barriers for an equitable quality of life for those living with a disability. How would you work to ensure a disability identifier question is added to all city surveys, applications, and other forms where other optional demographic questions, for example, race and ethnicity, age, gender, LGBTQ identity, and income are collected?
Awesome, thank you. This is something we have to address as a community and add inside a charter. We need to put this in so we can make this kind of citywide, where if we have that, we could put it in. We can also collect data from other cities who have implemented this already to help improve on what we're doing. Like if we're building in a certain area and we need to address handicap or disabilities in the infrastructure. We could address prior cities who already done it, but we need to add this to amendment, a bill already in our charter.
All right, question number 3. We're going to continue with candidate Guzman being first for this question. And the question is, how do you see your district office working better with our disability community on the city level?
On city level, I'm going to be there more often and have aides there to address any issues. That seems to be a problem with prior administration, that people contact our different district offices and will not have a reply back. So I'm willing to be there more for the people who need it. And also I'm willing to work with organizations to what they need. It may not be clear what a certain individual or a certain group needs if we do not, if I or you do not have whatever disability or impairment, we may not understand, or we may not think of what you actually need. So listening to the community and actually addressing the problems that face them is the key to helping the community. Thank you.
All right, candidate Mueller. Question number 3. How do you see your district office working better with our disability community on the city level?
Basically, like I said, I'm a nonprofit person at heart. I know that they are on the front lines, so I would be all up on SALSA and any of the other nonprofits out there to find out exactly what the city needs to do to support them. And yeah, I mean, nonprofits are definitely on the front lines. They're not doing it for money. And so they're the ones that I consider experts in what they're advocating for. So yeah, I'm just going to be focusing on the nonprofits for most policy things. Thank you, sir.
All right, for question number 4, we will start with candidate Guzman. And the question is, how do you plan to interject considerations of residents living with physical, intellectual, sensory, or mental health disabilities which need to be addressed as the city works to negotiate updated policies and practices around policing in our community?
This is a big issue that I've seen at our school district when I was teaching. We actually have to introduce police to these scenarios and have them understand and find key points that say, okay, this person might not be in the right state of mind, or this person might not hear me, and really address the issue without increasing a force or making the situation worse. We need more training with programs to identify what an individual might be going through if they can't hear, if they can't see, and we need to work with individuals in our community who might be having some difficulty with the police, and introducing them and making them comfortable and understand what to do in a situation dealing with the cops. So it's kind of a two-way street. We need to have more lessons for the cops, how to deal with certain situations, and have some more mental health education on the cops' part. And we need to help those things.
Thank you. All right, candidate, am I pronouncing your last name right?
Bueller, yes, just saying Ferris Bueller.
Perfect. All right, candidate Mueller, how do you plan to interject considerations of residents living with physical, intellectual, sensory, or mental health disabilities which need to be addressed as the city works to negotiate updated policies and practices around policing in our community?
Well, unfortunately, I have actually experienced the police where I've needed to advocate for different survivors. I know that the police definitely need more training on compassion. I have a police reform thing and accountability, but we definitely do need to get them out there. I had to call the cops on a friend with PTSD the other 2 weeks ago, and I explained to them all his issues. They handled it perfectly because they knew exactly what to expect. You know, they knew he was PTSD, alcoholic, like having a suicidal thing, and they went out there and they handled it professionally and safely. And that's exactly how the cops should be, you know, especially when somebody's having a crisis. And yeah, I know a lot of people aren't going to be as honest with the police, and they're just gonna be like, my friend, but you know, I knew it could have gone very dangerous for him. So yeah, definitely think we need to train them better and give them actual experience with the people that they have a tendency to mishandle.
Thank you, candidate Mueller. You will lead the way on question number 5. What steps, if any, would you take to assist families caring for students in special education programs during the pandemic who have found their students without necessary aids and services and are regressing in their development?
Now nonprofits have a lot of access to really great technology. So I know there's JAWS, which is amazing for blind people on computers, because one of our counselors had to use that. I had to set it up. And I know there's so many things out there. Like you can even have an iPad like tell you what you can use it to walk, basically. It announces what's in your way. It tells you colors. And we just need to get them access to the technology that can help them start learning and help them continue learning. Yeah, lack of technology is what's pretty much hindering a lot of society right now. That's one of the things I definitely want to focus on, is getting everybody access to the exact same technology and internet. I know Raymond also was into the whole city funding internet thing, so we're both on the same page with that. But yeah, I think, you know, we just need to give everybody the exact same opportunity to get the thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Guzman, what steps, if any, would you take to assist families caring for students in special education programs during the pandemic who have found their students without necessary aids and services and are regressing in their development?
As a teacher, this hits close to home. I understand what these parents are going through. And what we need is we need to bring these students in and help them catch back up. We need them to have more time in the classroom to help them address the issue that they're facing. A lot of times, students in that situation might not be able to focus on their own and need that extra attention from a teacher. Shoving them in a classroom with too many students doesn't help as well. And just throwing iPad in front of them, sometimes they get distracted. We really need to focus on the individual students' need, group them properly in the groups that they need to be in, and give them the extra attention, extra teaching attention that they need until they catch up. And this might involve summer school, or even extended schools, or this time outside the regular classroom and with the individual tutor. But we need to address this issue and bring someone in to help the individual students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question 6, Candidate Guzman, you will lead the way here. When the vaccines begin to arrive in regular intervals, what will you do to ensure individuals living with disabilities in our community have equitable access and reasonable opportunity for receiving the vaccine?
The vaccine right now is a little bit hard to get hold of, but when it rolls out for more people, we need to have programs just like programs for individuals who can't leave their home to get their shot, and programs for individuals who may not have access to a building. We need to actually go out there and administer their shots if they want it. We need to have larger events, such as local areas where we can administer the vaccine close enough for individuals to get to. And in special cases, we might have to, like I said, go to the individual house and give them the vaccine if they want it. So we need to have phone lines and more outreach to the public to understand their needs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Mueller, when the vaccines begin to arrive in regular intervals, what will you do to ensure individuals living with disabilities in our community have equitable access and reasonable opportunity for receiving the vaccine?
Luckily, I just got my first shot today, so I'm waiting on my superpowers to develop. But I definitely would look into talking to some of the nonprofits to get their list of people that they know aren't going to be able to go out and get it, and then actually have volunteers go out and register them for the vaccine, and if needed, we'll either team up with somebody to get them transportation or have a mobile unit that comes out. And I mean, there's people that can't leave their house, period, but we definitely want to get them inoculated, whatever it's called. Sorry. And yeah, so we basically would have people going out there and registering them, and then getting them where they need to go. And we're taking care of our citizens, which is what the city should do. Thank you.
Thank you. For question number 7, we will begin with candidate Guzman. And the question is, what specific action do you think that the city could take to improve hiring opportunities for persons with disabilities?
We need outreach to businesses and have them understand that people with disabilities are capable and are willing to work. Some of the newer, smaller businesses may not understand that someone with it may have a disability, but they could do everything that's called for that job position. We might have to work with different companies to have hiring job fairs for the disabilities in small situations, or we might have lists where knowing companies are more willing to hire certain people. I know HEB is one of those companies that are more willing or more out there to hire someone with a disability. There are federal laws, demanding that, if they're capable, they have to be hired. Unfortunately, they don't follow through with this, and it's kind of hard to prove that individual wasn't hired for this, but we need to work with local businesses to ensure that they're reaching out and hiring these people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, candidate Mueller. Question 7. What specific action do you think the city could take to improve hiring opportunities for persons with disabilities?
I was actually just wondering how have people with disability been at pivoting for this whole working at home thing? Is there a lot of, working from home opportunities for them, like data entry or things like that, where they can just do everything online? I mean, there's Salesforce developing, which is super simple to learn. So I guess it all depends on what opportunities they're missing out on right now. Unfortunately, I'm not sure, what's keeping them down besides the whole pandemic and social distancing thing. Do you have any insights? Sorry.
If you don't have anything else to add for your answer, then we'll move on to our next question. All right, question 8, we will start with candidate Mueller. And our question, in the past, there have been numerous barriers preventing individuals with disabilities from actively participating in the elections process within Bexar County. Do you see any opportunities where, if elected, you could positively influence best practices for inclusion and accommodation in the election processes within Bexar County, especially when it comes to city elections?
I would definitely look into turning actual voting into a fun thing, like setting up little festivals right outside of the voting place. I'm sure that's legal. After this whole Georgia voter fraud and voter suppression thing, we're focused on trying to make it so everybody can vote. But yeah, just including them, letting them have forums like this where they can talk to the candidates and let us know what issues they're facing. And just getting out there and getting all their info, finding out how they think we can help them, or how they know we can help them, and how we aren't currently.
Thank you. I'm going to briefly take a step aside. I believe that candidate Garcia has joined us. Welcome. Thank you for joining the partners in the disability vote this evening for Conversation 360, the vote and disability. This session is being recorded and will be posted to the Disability SA website, YouTube channel, and social media platforms following tonight's conversation. We'll let you jump right in, candidate Garcia, with question number 8. In the past, there have been numerous barriers preventing individuals with disabilities from actively participating in the elections process within Bexar County. Do you see any opportunities where, if elected, you could positively influence best practices for inclusion and accommodation in the election processes within Bexar County, especially when it comes to city elections?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you. Earlier, I was on and I was in one of the breakout sessions, and the woman from the Texas disability organization was talking about how, well, there was another woman in there who was talking about her experience. And so the lady from the Texas organization, statewide organization, said that they were trying to, that they could be called at any time, right, to get help. And I don't think that a lot of our disability community knows that, right? And so I think that working together with advocates like them is critical. And so reaching nonprofit organizations, reaching any of the local organizations that work with folks who might have any sort of disability is going to be critical, because we need to learn from them, right? We need to learn from the advocates that are already have research that tells us what best practices are. Now, if there isn't enough in best practices, I think that we could probably work together on doing this. And I'll give you all an example of what I mean. the woman that was talking about was earlier was saying that she took the Via Trans over to one of the voting locations and she didn't have a great experience. And what she reminded me of is that we have this great advocate now on the Via board. And so I'm on the governance committee on city council, and I was able to help convince my colleagues that we needed to look at representation from the disability community on the VIA board. And luckily, Miss Hadley alone, she's a star. I mean, she didn't need to be sold. Everybody loves her. She's great. So she, oh, sorry. I didn't know we had time limit.
I think you're muted. I think you were muted.
Catherine, we can't hear you.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Is up? Am I back?
Yes.
Okay. Candidate Guzman, were you able to hear the question?
No, but I remember the question.
Okay.
We need to address the disability, those with disabilities, and help them understand that there are ways that they could have an easier way to vote. There's ways that they can kind of cut to the front line. The machines could read the vote to them if they're visually impaired. If they're hearing impaired, we have, and of course, the machines are visual. There's different steps that we could take. And if there's something that we're not addressing, we need to hear from the community itself. I know that there was long waits and there's some people it was turned off by them and did not vote. If you are in a wheelchair or if you have a disability, most, if not all the polls are willing to push you to the head of the line. I saw this even with the extremely elderly that they kind of got pushed to the front of the line. But if there's a situation that we're not addressing, please feel free to contact us so we can address it. Thank you.
Thank you. For question 9, we will start with candidate Garcia. According to San Antonio Code of Ordinance, section 2911, it is the duty of any property owner to maintain the sidewalks, parkway, curb, and driveway abutting said property in a good and safe condition, free from any defects and hazards. How would you address the challenges for building and repairing sidewalks to improve the walkability and accessibility of our city for those who depend on pedestrian modalities?
So we have been actively working on a list of streets that need repairs, and whether they get called in by different people or whether it be as we're walking about in our communities and we notice this, we take an active effort right away to add it to our list of projects. And so unfortunately with the funding levels, it takes a little bit of time, but it really takes being out in the community, walking the community, talking to people. I had a great conversation with this gentleman the other day who said the exact same thing that you did. We need to have access because I can't walk very well and my walker won't make it down the sidewalk the way it is right now. And so looking at definitely other ways to get that information into us other than 311, and it's just critical to be out there in the neighborhoods as much as we can to see them ourselves. So that's what I would propose doing, just continuing to advocate and walk with the residents.
Thank you. Candidate Guzman, question 9. According to the San Antonio Code of Ordinance, section 2911, it is the duty of any property owner to maintain the sidewalks, parkway, curb, and driveway abutting said property in a good and safe condition, free from any defects and hazards. How would you address the challenges for building and repairing sidewalks to improve the walkability and accessibility of our city for those who depend on pedestrian modalities?
This is a big issue in District 4. We have a lot of sidewalks that are in disrepair or not wide enough for someone in a wheelchair. We need to make sure that all the sidewalks, if possible, are at least will fit a standard wheelchair plus more room for someone to pass by. And this is obvious. We need to keep track of sidewalks that we already done and really hit those areas that have not been renovated for decades. I've seen areas that I grew up here. I've seen areas that I saw as a kid still haven't had new sidewalks in. This is something that we need to address and really hit hard. If I'm in office, we really need to update our infrastructure, especially the sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, candidate Mueller, question 9. According to San Antonio City Code of Ordinance, section 2911, it is the duty of any property owner to maintain the sidewalks, parkway, curb, and driveway abutting said property in a good and safe condition, free from any defects and hazards. How would you address the challenges for building and repairing sidewalks to improve the walkability and accessibility of our city for those who depend on pedestrian modalities?
Actually, one of the first things I want to focus on is LEDs on crosswalks and glow in the dark bike lanes, things like that. I mean, we've had a lot of people getting hit by cars late at night, and it definitely shouldn't be happening. I definitely want to get our streets a lot better. I went and drove last weekend to check out, all of the signs that were out there, and oh my God, yeah, Military Drive needs so much work. And that's, oh man, it's bad, but that's why I'm running, to try to get get that sense of community that we used to have back in the 80s and early 90s back, And we definitely, I've heard from a lot of people that want covered via bus stops and things like that in the area, or move them closer because they're not able to reach, they're not able to get to the bus stop in time. And yeah, we gotta get.
All right, moving on to question 10, we're going to start with candidate Guzman. And our question is, what types of sensitivity training do you think community-facing employees and officials should have around the topic of disability?
I think most, especially in a government job, that there should be at least some sensitivity training, especially if you deal with the public. When we start off, this should be implemented maybe in the classroom in high school when the college student, when the high school students are about to leave, we do training for them in different situations. This is one thing that we need to address. And also for the young people starting new businesses, this is one thing that we should address with them and maybe have a class on while we're helping them get business licenses, addressing the valuability of a disabled worker and how they could be very valuable to the company, and how we need to be sensitive and of their abilities and address their needs.
Thank you. Moving on to candidate Mueller. What types of sensitivity training do you think community-facing employees and officials should have around the topic of disability?
I'm assuming they're already pretty good at it, but man, I have a lot of experience because I used to volunteer with, special ed class in middle school, high school. I don't see how anybody could have a problem with, dealing with any constituents. So I'm not sure how I would, fix that. Sorry.
Thank you. Candidate Garcia, question 10. What types of sensitivity training do you think community-facing employees and officials should have around the topic of disability?
So Catherine, I went to a training a few months ago over at Morgan's Wonderland. It was IED training, and it was being put on in a joint effort. I have also been meeting regularly with Any Baby Can, and I asked if we could have quarterly meetings. As a result of that, I also asked the city manager if we could have all of our frontline employees that work in parks, in senior centers, in libraries, to have mandatory training. And so the Office of Human Resources is actually looking to see how they can add this component into those frontline workers so that they are aware of how to maybe talk to a child with autism, or maybe how to help someone who needs help, has a physical ability or a physical disability. And so I've started work already on it, and I continue to try to bridge the gap there as well in the need for training.
Thank you. Just to confirm, everyone has had the opportunity to answer question 10, correct? Okay. Moving on to question 11, we're going to start with candidate Mueller. What do you see as the major factors preventing members of the disability community from achieving economic resiliency? And what actions, if any, would you take to improve economic outcomes for members of the disability community?
This definitely comes into my whole access to information and the internet. So I would definitely be working as hard as I could to get them online and train them on, what to do online. And even people that are very familiar with the internet fall for stupid scams and things like that. So yeah, I would definitely look into getting them the access to the information and the technology that they need to, actually make whatever. Sorry. Yeah, just I want to get them online, hook them up with training, and teach them how to use the internet for all the fun stuff and learning.
Thank you. Candidate Garcia, question 11. What do you see as the major factors preventing members of the disability community from achieving economic resiliency? And what actions, if any, would you take to improve economic outcomes for members of the disability community?
One of the things that I've been fortunate to be a part of is the workforce program that the city has initiated. Unfortunately, one of the first things that I noticed was that there was no component for folks with disabilities. I was able to connect with some folks over at YADA, and I let them know the different things that I was doing in advocacy for folks with disabilities. And so I will continue working on behalf of this underrepresented population. In fact, I have a seat right now that is open for a disability representative. And so there's a woman who represents, or who's a member of YADA, who I think represents the community very well. And I plan to get her some more involvement, even though she doesn't, necessarily only focus in District 4. I think she does great things for the entire city. And I think that's the type of advocate we need. So I'll continue to work and advocate for folks with disabilities, whether it be through workforce training opportunities or even business opportunities, right? And so in the RFP process, et cetera.
Thank you. All right, candidate Guzman, question 11. What do you see as the major factors preventing members of the disability community from achieving economic resiliency? And what actions, if any, would you take to improve economic outcomes for members of the disability community?
Thank you. A big problem will be unexpected costs for them, whether they're disabled because they're missing a limb or a situation of that sort. We can work with the community to help offset those prices with STEM programs for our high school students and other programs to help them understand how these prosthetic works and help them build prosthetics. One of the people I met in my career was one of the military members and offered Black Hawk Down. He was one of the first people to receive a bionic limb. He got a bionic leg, and it was one of the first ones in the US, and it cost over $100,000. And it is something that still is expensive today. So these unexpected expensive affect people in the disability group, especially if they need a new wheelchair. We need to help them repair or get new wheelchairs. And by implementing STEM and engineering programs with our high school students and helping them with community service, this is something that we could help address this problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be moving on to question 12, and we're starting with candidate Garcia for question 12. Currently, VIA paratransit services cover only those living within 3/4 of a mile of a traditional bus line, and ride-sharing options are not always accessible. What legislation, policy, or use of city resources would you champion to influence the expansion of accessible, affordable, and efficient transportation options for those living with disabilities outside the mandated VIA trans service areas?
So one of the things that we recently passed along with the SA Ready to Work, and so when SA Ready to Work it concludes, right, that money will then go to VIA. And so I'm excited about VIA Trans being expanded. And so I have residents that use that. I have an 87-year-old resident who regularly uses that to get to her appointments. And so I think that the need is there. I think that if you look at our growing population as a city, you look at our demographic, there is a large demographic that is going to need a little bit more help in the coming years getting around. So not only access to healthcare, but definitely access to transportation, access to services that come straight to your home are going to be critical. So I will continue to be an advocate for transportation needs for District 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to candidate Guzman. Question 12. Currently, VIA paratransit services cover only those living within 3/4 of a mile of a traditional bus line, and ride-sharing options are not always accessible. What legislation, policy, or use of city resources would you champion to influence the expansion of accessible, affordable, and efficient transportation options for those living with disabilities outside the mandated VIA trans service areas?
Outside, we need to bring in a smart car company like Tesla and help them improve the cars in exchange for free transportation to these folks who may need it. This will increase the jobs in our area. This will also increase transportation availability to disabled individuals. And also dealing with these companies, we could probably do this at no cost to the individuals and with probably a slight tax break to the company. This will bring in more jobs, and this will help deal with outdated busing systems. Individuals with disabilities might not feel comfortable on buses, and having to wait for a bus sometimes is not the best thing for an individual. Those with audio disabilities who get overloaded, this will be a good alternative to them. And this will help overall good, so we know in the future what we can see. Thank you.
Thank you. And then moving along to candidate Mueller, question 12. Currently, VIA paratransit services cover only those living within 3/4 of a mile of a traditional bus line, and ride-sharing options are not always accessible. What legislation, policy, or use of city resources would you champion to influence the expansion of accessible, affordable, and efficient transportation options for those living with disabilities outside the mandated VIA trans service areas?
Unfortunately, I had to deal with a lot of transportation issues when I was at the Rape Crisis Center. We had partnerships with Yellow Cab, which we'd be able to write off. And that would definitely be something I'd want to look into, maybe trying to partner up with Uber or Lyft to, get the rides and, we get a discount. Because I know VIA used to give us passes to give out to our parents and people, but most of the times when we had to give a ride, it was late night, and VIA is not running, and the survivor is not going to want to be on VIA bus. So I actually debated forming a nonprofit that just offered transportation to other nonprofits. So I don't know if that's even a thing, but it's definitely needed, and I would be looking into ways to get that implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Mueller, will keep you starting off for question number 13. What do you see as the pros and cons to emphasizing the disability lens alongside the racial and poverty lenses when examining and implementing equity measures and initiatives in San Antonio?
It is actually, I believe, the perfect time to highlight everything that we want to try to get equalized. So, right now there's a lot of the Asian and Black Lives Matter, and we need to get everything in there. We need everybody to realize that, hey, yeah, racism and disability, all this stuff is there. We have to be talking about it to actually get it fixed. And there's the people that don't want to talk about it, and they're the reason it's not getting fixed. So, I definitely want everybody to understand the issues that everybody's facing, and realize that it's not just a me problem, it's everybody's problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to candidate Garcia. What do you see as the pros and cons to emphasizing the disability lens alongside the racial and poverty lenses when examining and implementing equity measures and initiatives in San Antonio?
I think that if we want to be equitable, we need to think of everyone that gets left behind. And definitely, I think that folks with disability get left behind, whether it be because maybe people just don't think about it. Maybe they don't have someone in their family with a disability. Maybe they don't have friends around them on a daily basis to remind them of the needs. But it's definitely critical that we continue focusing on this along with every ounce of our equity lens. And so, like I was mentioning before, when I saw the plan for workforce that didn't have any focus specifically on disability, I asked a question right away. When I saw the COVID recovery and resiliency plan that was presented to us back in August that did not address the disability community, I asked the question right away as well. And so I think we need to continue having people at the table that will ask, but not only ask, but continue to ask or to bring others to the table so that we can advocate as best that we can together with one collective voice. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, candidate Guzman, question 13. What do you see as the pros and cons to emphasizing the disability lens alongside the racial and poverty lenses when examining and implementing equity measures and initiatives in San Antonio?
Well, we really have to address the disability individuals in San Antonio. I feel that's one group that gets left behind and does not get pushed in the forefront of people's minds. I think this is probably one group that really needs that extra push and extra highlight so we can address individuals' needs. They may not have the voice or the ability to speak up for themselves. So we as a city has to help them address that and really seek out that information. Unlike the other groups that could speak for themselves, they cannot, and a lot of times they need advocates to speak for them. So this is something that we have to address and really reach out and listen to what they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Guzman, we'll keep you first for question 14. What experience do you have with accessible technology?
As a teacher, this is something that we want to have in the classroom and that I work with in the classroom, whether that's a cart system that translate what you say as a text or visual aids for the students. And this is something that we need to address more in schools and have more accessibility to the students. A lot of schools may not understand what a student may need, whether that is a hearing aid or something for the individual student to hear them speak, or a piece of paper that's a different color. This is something that we really need to integrate in the classroom and really address and figure out how we can implement that outside the classroom for individuals in the workforce, whether that's a special translucent paper of a different color or a CAD system or whatever they may need. This is something that we need to address and really put out there for different companies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Mueller, question 14. What experience do you have with accessible technology?
Okay, unfortunately, you just hit on one of my specialties. So, all right, JAWS. I've definitely set that one up before. It's used for blind people to be able to use Windows. I do voice. I actually run my iPhone with voice control turned on, and I've helped set up people with the apps that tell them what color it is or what pill they're holding. Like, there's so many amazing things out there that can help people that they don't have access to, and they need to have access to it because it's amazing. Like, that's one reason I want to get everybody on the internet. There's people that don't even know that if they're eligible for vaccine or where to go or anything, because they have to call 311, and that it takes a long time. So there's people in our district, 69% online, 2 years ago at least, and everybody needs to be because they all need the access to their vaccine and learning and stuff like that. So I'm a huge
Thank you. Candidate Garcia, finishing up with question 14 for you. What experience do you have with accessible technology?
I teach at Early Lake University. I teach marketing, and we are required to have accessibility built into every one of our courses. So whether it be closed caption on all of the videos that we present or any other type of resource, we do that. And so we are trained. Our Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence reviews our courses for accessibility. And so I'm very familiar with going through everything and making sure that it's accessible. I also work very well with the Office of Disabilities, specifically at the university where I work. And so I get to learn a little bit more about students that have different abilities. And so it takes understanding each and everyone's case. And so those are the types of training that I'm familiar with. If I don't know about something, I immediately want to learn. And so that's how I approach training.
Thank you. We'll keep you as going first for question number 15, Candidate Garcia. Tell us a little bit about how you see yourself as a role model and a leader who is paving the way toward independence for youth and adults with disabilities in the San Antonio community.
Sure. Well, thank you for the question. And so I continue to be an advocate. I've been an advocate from my very first few weeks on council. And so this is my rookie term on the city council. So I have learned a whole lot. I have started the Girls Empowerment Summit, reminding young women that they can be anything that they want, even in maybe male-dominated careers, traditionally male-dominated careers. I'd love to take that same approach and use that for our children with disabilities so that they could see that they too might be able to have the job of their dreams. And so that they're not just pigeonholed into certain types of jobs because of their abilities, and that we as adults really take the lead and champion these different opportunities that our children could be really successful at when we make minor adjustments for them. And so these are talented, smart, loving kids, and I think that we need to continue investing in them.
Thank you. Candidate Guzman, question 15. Tell us a little bit about how you see yourself as a role model and leader who is paving the way toward independence for youth and adults with disabilities in the San Antonio community.
I have worked with the disability community, helped them learn Taekwondo and different activities, and helping them build that confidence and teaching them to be individuals and understand that they can live on their own and that their disability is just a small setback, and have them build that confidence is really important to these individuals. Have them understand that they can have individual lives and fulfilling lives, and if they want to climb a mountain or if they want to beat someone up with Taekwondo, they could do it. It's just one step forward, and really helping them gain that confidence and helping them get in programs, whether it's a sport or educational program or some program of that sort, is really important that we help them achieve those goals, and really important that they understand that they are capable of doing it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Candidate Mueller, question 15. Tell us a little bit about how you see yourself as a role model and a leader who is paving the way toward independence for youth and adults with disabilities in the San Antonio community.
Okay. My actual political idol is Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, and it really bothers me that people aren't teaching or living his message of, equality and everybody's right, everybody's the same, and it's you I like, not because of what you wear, and trying to be everyone's neighbor. And it bothered me that nobody was running like that. I was like, dude, I can run like that, and I am. So I'm looking to give the same positivity that Mr. Rogers gave me, by just letting everybody know that people are different, but we're all the same because, we all should be just looking out for each other. So I hope, even if I don't win, I hope somebody sees the message that, goodness is still out there. And, that's what I hope. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have you continue to lead the way for question number 16. How would you implement software training to people living with disabilities?
All right, again, that's one of my specialties. I actually do train quite a bit in software. And if you've ever worked nonprofit, most of the high ups have no idea what a computer is. And you have to teach them. And it's just like teaching a child. So I do that quite regularly and have absolutely no problem with patients, because I understand that not everybody learns the same. And I actually cater my training to the slowest learner. So everybody, at the equal point. So yeah, I do know how to train people, and I know how to get them what they want to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Garcia. Excuse me, question 16, Candidate Garcia. How would you implement software training to people living with disabilities?
Sorry, I'm sorry, software training?
Software training.
Okay, so well, we have experienced the digital divide in District 4, and so we know that our folks have already stayed behind. And again, one of the things that we need to continue to do is reach out to nonprofit organizations, continue working with them. They are not only our eyes and ears, but they're sometimes the experts in what they do, right? And so we need to continue to work with them, and more importantly, continue to advocate for increased funding for them. So leveraged partnerships will be critical, right? To continue to make sure that we have access to, because the software is expensive. And so we need to continue to have funding for that ability, but more importantly, it's going to take a very strong focus on marketing to the folks who need this access. And so marketing twofold: one, in that that there's software that is available to them, and two, that it is free. And because that's the plan, right? Is to try to get as much as free access to everyone as possible. And so whether it include even, giving access through different hotspots or different devices, it is going to take an entire community to work together. And so we'll continue doing that.
Thank you. Candidate Guzman. How would you implement software training to people living with disabilities?
This has to start early when they're still in school. If we could work with the school system and make sure that they have access to this software at no cost. And the other issue is dealing with the internet, the digital divide. District 4, that's a big problem. We could work with different companies such as Starlink with internet making sure that our outside district or outside towards the edge of the district where they lack good internet, we can work with these companies to get them free internet and really get them access to these software that they need, and making sure that companies that have different hardware has the ability to give access to the software. If they buy a computer, we need to help them identify the software on the computer. So we might have to have programs where they could come in with your devices and we could show them how to use it and how the already implemented software is on there. A lot of software is already free and on the devices. It's just having the knowledge and
Thank you.
access to it. Thank you.
All right, candidate Guzman, will stick with you for the first answer to question 17. What efforts will you take to ensure that people with disabilities are represented, engaged with, and a part of the boards, commissions, committees, and special appointments that impact the planning, visioning, and governing of San Antonio?
We need them in there with us, whether that's the organization or the individuals. We need to identify who they are and what they could bring to the table. And basically it's life experience. Most of us are able-bodied and we may not be able to identify what needs they face. And we need them at the table so we understand what needs they are facing and how we could address it. And without them on the table, we'll miss a ton of ideals and we'll never have it to be implemented. We also need them to reach out. I'll be in the office as much as possible for them to reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Mueller, question 17. What efforts will you take to ensure that people with disabilities are represented, engaged with, and a part of the boards, commissions, committees, and special appointments that impact the planning, visioning, and governing of San Antonio?
Like I said, I love nonprofits, so I do have quite a bit of experience with boards, and I actually serve on a few boards where I'm just there because I'm IT and they needed somebody that could help them with their website. So I'm not a typical board member, obviously, and I prefer actually working with the actual frontline people. So I'd be reaching out to all the nonprofits saying, like, who would you want representing you on this board? And go with their recommendations, because who knows better than the frontline? And yeah, I'm going to do everything I can to include absolutely every person that can be included for all policy, not just some, all.
Engaged with and a part. Can you hear me? Apologies for that. What efforts will you take to ensure that people with disabilities are represented, engaged with, and a part of the boards, commissions, committees, and special appointments that impact the planning, visioning, and governing of San Antonio?
So as I mentioned earlier, I was a strong advocate for Miss Athlete alone to be the first representative on VIA who was legally blind. And so continue advocacy for Miss Athlete. We reappointed her recently. She's done a phenomenal job. We reappointed her in February. And so in fact, yesterday I was talking to someone who was doing an interview, and I recommended that they go and talk to Athlete and to Melanie Cawthon as well about the need for more awareness of the disability community, not just in District 4, but across the entire city. And additionally, I was part of the committee that also I got to recommend a gentleman for the Riverwalk Capital Improvements Advisory Board. And so typically when you think of the Riverwalk, you think of people walking. And so I think that we need some increased attention to detail. Accessibility to the Riverwalk, which is one of San Antonio's just most beautiful spots and iconic spots, should be for everyone. And so I advocated for a young gentleman who has a disability to be on that committee. And so we were able to get him on. I'm very proud of those two appointments so far, but we'll continue to advocate for some additional ones.
Thank you. Candidate Garcia, because you were not here with us at the very beginning of this discussion, I want to give you an opportunity to take 2 minutes to introduce yourself, introduce why you're running for office and why the disability vote is important to you.
Sure, thank you. And my apologies, I was teaching tonight, so I teach. And so like I said, have been in my rookie year as council member. Nobody told me that there was going to be a global pandemic or social unrest or snowmageddon or any of that. And so my first term really took a turn. I needed to focus on everything COVID related, from the Wuhan evacuation landing in Lackland Air Force Base, which is part of District 4, to now, where we continue to advocate for resources such as right now, the COVID vaccinations. And so because my work has been so focused on that, my work has also been focused on the winter response now and making sure that we hold folks accountable for what didn't happen that should have happened during the winter storm. I have been entirely focused on different things that have not allowed me to really do what I set out to do at the beginning of my term. And so when I started running, and so I want to continue to work on workforce and economic development for District 4. We know that people want to see our side of town grow. We want development in it. We want responsible development specifically. And so I want to continue on that path. But I think that it's also an opportunity, because of what we've learned for COVID, to really explain to people that quality of life is not equitable for folks in District 4. And so one of the areas that is most impacted in District 4 is the disability community. And so when you think about the access to sidewalks, the access to parks, etc., I have not been able to concentrate a whole lot of my efforts because we've been dealing with COVID recovery, COVID resiliency. And so I would like the opportunity to continue to work as much as possible with the disability community. I have tried to advocate as much as possible, but I think that a second term would allow me to. Thank you.
All right, now at this time, I'm going to allow everyone 1 additional minute to go back if they desire and expand on a question of their choosing. So we are going to start with candidate Guzman.
Sorry, I have to think about this. We really need to work with the disability community and have them come in and understand that we will be there if I am chosen, that I will not stretch myself thin with other jobs and focus on city council. It should be a full-time job. I really want them to understand that they need access to transportation and internet. The internet, we need infrastructure all around. We need to improve in District 4 to improve the lives of disabled individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Mueller, at this time, you can have 1 minute to go back and expand on a question of your choosing.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to talk about the digital divide and how I believe that San Antonio should actually monopolize the internet and own it like a public utility, which means we'd be able to sell it to other people and actually make money. And it would be a brand new funding source that we could use to get our damn property taxes lowered, because those things suck. My stimulus went to be like property tax and didn't even pay it. And yeah, so I want to get everybody online with the city owning it, and we have the coolest infrastructure in the world. So let's do that. All for me.
Thank you. And candidate Garcia, at this time, you can have 1 minute to go back and expand on a question of your choosing.
Sure, and I'll expand on the question of representation on boards and committees of folks with different abilities. And so we need to continue doing that. We need to have that perspective on as many boards as possible, if not every single board and committee on the city. There is pushback because they say, oh, well, then we just have to find that person, and then it makes it difficult and leaves other candidates out. I don't think that we should settle for that. And I think that as advocates working with the disability community, we need to continue being champions in everything. So everything that the city does should have a careful attention and consideration paid to the disability community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that concludes this evening's discussion. I want to thank everyone again for joining the Partners in the Disability Vote this evening for the Conversation 360, the Vote and Disability. As a reminder, we've been here tonight with candidates who are running in the District 4 City Council race, which will be held on Saturday, May 1st. The deadline to register to vote is Thursday, April 1st. So thank you so much to candidates Guzman, Mueller, and Garcia for your time and engagement and attention tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.